Well, as Kaveh mentioned there, the news about Amorim was first reported by The Athletic. I'm very happy to say we can speak now to their Manchester United reporter, Laurie Whitwell, who was one of those names attributed to this story. Laurie, a very good evening to you. Busy day for you, I'm sure, from start to finish so far, and certainly not finished yet. Just bring us up to date with your very latest understanding of where we are currently at in regards with Ruben Amorim.
Yeah, I think Kaveh summed up very well. There are talks taking place between Manchester United and Sporting Lisbon over the compensation package, the release clause. It's a little bit difficult to untangle that entirely. But yeah, 10 million euros, we believe, is around the cost that it might take for United to get Ruben Amorim out of his contract at Sporting Lisbon. And so there is a hope, at least, or an expectation, I think, from people in Portugal as well, that this could be concluded fairly swiftly. Ruben Nistelrooy is the interim manager at the moment. United have got a game against Leicester in the Carabao Cup on Wednesday, and then Chelsea in the Premier League on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see if United can get this deal done and get Amorim in place for those games, more likely the Chelsea one, I suppose. But it might take a little bit of time to untangle. But yeah, I think the fact that United have made their target very clear and they are going for it in a very sort of professional way, I think certainly is a little bit in contrast to the managerial merry-go-round we heard at the end of last season, where a lot of names were spoken to, a lot of reports were made. This feels like it's a lot slicker operation.
Yeah, Laura, I wonder, what does it say about the fact that there's already a candidate being spoken to and the speed that Manchester United are moving? It suggests that whilst people might have been shocked about Erik ten Hag, they do actually have a plan.
Yes, certainly. I mean, there was an ExCo meeting, an executive committee meeting earlier this month where Erik ten Hag's position was discussed. You had Sir Jim Ratcliffe there as the co-owner, Joel Glazer, the executive team at Manchester United. So I think they would have probably at that point spoken about the potential succession plan. But that doesn't sort of discount the fact that I think they are moving quickly today. So, they obviously want to keep something like this under wraps for as long as possible. And I'm not sure exactly when talks will have first taken place, but you can be sure that, I think soundings out would have happened because the situation around Erik ten Hag was clearly going in one direction. I think he felt certainly strongly, I was there in the London Stadium on Sunday, that he felt he could turn it around still, and he had that confidence. But I think ultimately people were expecting this to happen. And whilst it might be a surprise that it happened after a game where United played pretty well, certainly first half, should have scored 2 or 3 goals, and it was a controversial VAR decision that made them lose the game. I think ultimately the board have been looking at this as a potential for a while yet.
Do you think there was anyone else that they thought about, Laurie, in this circumstance? We know that there were a lot of talks in the summer when they decided to stick with Erik ten Hag, but I'm thinking that possibly one of those names that was mentioned a lot in the summer was Thomas Tuchel. He obviously got the England job. Do you think that affected what Manchester United have done now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Tuchel was a really fascinating case because certainly he was the one that they were going to go for if they were going to replace Erik ten Hag at the end of last season. I think they got on to discussing financials, but ultimately it didn't happen, whether that was because he didn't feel the environment that he was going to go into was sufficient, whether he wanted to actually enter work again after Bayern Munich, whether that was a factor in his mind, also whether United got a bit of cold feet as well. I'm not sure exactly why that broke down, but certainly some people around it were telling me that was then a dead situation, and the whole sort of prospect of England coming for him earlier this month wasn't really a factor in United's decision making because they'd already discounted that as an eventuality. I don't know the exact truth of the matter, but I don't think that Tuchel was a real consideration this time round.
Laurie, this is a man who is very highly sought after, has been linked with the Chelsea job. He was in negotiations with West Ham, linked with Manchester City as well. Why is he so highly sought after? And what can Manchester United fans expect from him if he is the man to take over from Ten Hag?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been linked by a few, and Kaveh's right to mention the Man City sort of link because you look at Hugo Varane going over there from Sporting Lisbon, the sporting director there. There was perhaps an assumption that he would then return to Sporting Lisbon to go for Amorim if Pep Guardiola decides to leave at the end of the season. And also Liverpool had talks with him, didn't they? Although they then moved on to Arne Slot. There was West Ham, very public sort of approach by West Ham that I think maybe on reflection he probably didn't handle the best, but clearly this one's been done with a lot more secrecy, or at least the start of the conversation has. In terms of his football, 3 at the back is predominantly what he plays, but I don't think that necessarily he would have to fit that onto Manchester United. And in any case, I think their sort of squad perhaps suits a back three in certain games, maybe. But yeah, attractive brand of football. He's won 2 titles in Portugal, which I think is a real sign of what United were after. Somebody who has won already. They're not sort of expecting him to try and become a winner at Manchester United. And he's a young coach. A lot of people speak very highly of him. So I think if United do manage to pull it off, I think it will be regarded as a bit of a coup. Although, as we've seen before with other managers, Erik ten Hag was seen as maybe a bit of a coup when he came. He'd done really good work at Ajax. This club is a very difficult one to manage. So we shouldn't really expect, it just to be an easy fix.
Laurie, I want to pick you up on something that you and both Carve have said in the last few minutes, and that's the link with Hugo Viana, who's worked very closely with Amorim to much success at Sporting. He's going to be Director of Football at Manchester City next year. Could there be a late twist in this? We don't know what's going to happen with Pep Guardiola next season as of yet. His contract's up. We don't know if he'll stay on or not. Is there any risk here for Man United fans that he could be taken by their closest rivals?
I mean, possibly, but he'd have to wait right until next summer. And even then, we don't know for sure that Guardiola will leave. I mean, I've heard the same things as many other people, that this is seen as the final season for him. Chiqui Begiristain stepping down. What's going to happen with Ferran Soriano? So is this the moment that Pep finally says that he departs? But anyone that knows him will say that he is his own man and he can change his mind, and he kind of leaves it late to let people know. I mean, I suppose he would want a good succession plan in place if he is to depart, and maybe he would already have said that at this point. I'm sure that Ruben Amorim is very aware of the situation at Man City, and if he had any doubts about whether he could be in charge there, he might have a second thought. But then again, the same thing is that Manchester United are a huge club. There's great appeal for these coaches to come in and implant their ideas onto a club and make it a success again. It's a huge bone of success if they can do that. Whereas I suppose at Man City, you'd be taking over from a guy who's won 5 titles in 6 years and has won everything you could possibly win. So there's a different level of expectation there, I suppose.
So just a question then, Laurie, on Erik ten Hag. I mean, a lot of people, I suppose, won't be shocked that he's gone, but perhaps shocked at the timing of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they gave him the contract extension in the summer, the hope was that it would work out well, and they could have a season where they, he worked in a different environment than what he'd worked at before. They certainly weren't anticipating having to dismiss him at this stage of the season, 9 Premier League games into the campaign. But when they're 14th in the Premier League, they haven't won a game in Europe yet. You can understand them having a reflection and thinking maybe we need to make a change now. And I mean, yeah, losing away to West Ham, a poor West Ham team, I have to say, it isn't great, even though they were the better team and they should have won the game. So I think that, I think he will say that he's won 2 trophies at Man United. He's certainly tried to instill discipline. I think he's handled himself with great decorum. Even yesterday in the London Stadium, he didn't, attack the officials as such. He kind of just said the process isn't right, and I don't agree with it. So, I mean, maybe people could criticise him for that, and they want more passion and fire from him. But I think he generally was pretty consistent with his message, and he was very resolute in his belief that he could turn things around, even to the very end. But I think you can understand the executive board having a different interpretation.
Laurie, you've covered Manchester United very closely under Erik ten Hag's reign. Just looking at it on paper, it's interesting because finished 3rd in his first season, won the League Cup, reached FA Cup final, quarter-finals, Europa Leagues. Finished 8th, obviously very disappointing last season, but won the FA Cup, finished bottom of the Champions League group. That was a disappointment as well. And we know that this season isn't going to plan whatsoever. But there seems to be a lot of success in there as well. On paper, it's not the worst that we've seen. But where do you think it went wrong ultimately for Ten Hag?
It's the form in the league, isn't it? I mean, the injuries last season really did affect things. He also had a style that would, certain players didn't respond well to, right? So you had the issues with Cristiano Ronaldo, Jadon Sancho, other players, Casemiro, Rafael Varane, I think Marcus Rashford. Certain friction was there. He will say that at a club as kind of unruly as Man United. It's so huge, so many pundits around speaking on it, opinions, and that's difficult to kind of get a control of, and that's what he was trying to do. And certainly Sir Alex Ferguson, ruled Manchester United absolutely, and I think that's what Erik Ten Hag was trying to instill, but ultimately results were not good enough in the league form, which is where really you're measured. I mean, I think certainly fans will always thank him for those two special days at Wembley, winning the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup in particular, beating Man City in the final, a really memorable occasion for a lot of fans. But really you want the club to be playing good football, to be challenging for the title, and they were nowhere near it. So 2.5 seasons in, I think it's a fair time to make a reflection on that. And yeah, I mean, maybe Erik Ten Hag will go away somewhere else and be a success. He was certainly a success at Ajax, and I won't bet against him doing so again. But you can see why they felt like they wanted to make a change.